I'm tired of marching.
Wake your punk ass up. Warrior class, zoo, stand up. Warrior class, zoo, rise up. Warrior class, zoo, speak up. Warrior class, zoo, show up. Warrior class, zoo, smoke 'em out. Peace, blessings, and black power. It's Amaja Way to coming to you black at it again. Go ahead and put me in your Bluetooth. Go ahead and put me in your headphones. Go ahead and put me on your regular listening apparatus. As always, I don't want you to look at it because this is not a visual. This is pretty much audio. So keep your hands free. Continue on with your daily chores around the house or exercise. And pull up a chair and let's see if we can learn a few things. So let's see if I can hit you with the Amaja perspective. A lot of people talk about Martin Luther King and how he pretty much failed us or how he was leading us in the wrong direction. And in a nutshell, there's nothing you can say about it because we can see the end result. One of the things I also like to do is I like to give the perspective of both sides. There's more than one side to the story. As an elder man, he was born in his 20s. In the 20s, I'm pretty sure he thought that nonviolence was going to be the answer. And I'm pretty sure everything looked like nonviolence is the best answer, especially when you compare it to Malcolm X. And in hindsight 2020, we can now see that Martin, it's not that his intentions was wrong, his trajectory was wrong. So of course you want to still get out there in the streets, you want to do this and you want to do that. I got all that. But the mistake that we can now see hindsight 2020 is he should have been willing to draw blood. And that is a mistake. So the people didn't take him serious. I want to play some things for you guys and I want you to understand where I'm coming from my mindset. You guys want to push the needle. You guys want to push the narrative. You guys want to get things done. You can't get things done unless somebody is willing to cross the line. And I keep explaining to people, are you willing to cross the line? Or are you willing to pay that price? So I go wherever I go in the shadows and I do whatever I got to do to the necessary people that are willing to listen. And in a nutshell, people are not willing to cross the line. People are not willing to pay the price. So I want you to listen to what Martin has to say, and I'm going to give you my interpretation of we should have been willing to cross the line and we should have been willing to pay the price.
America has a very serious problem.
That racism is still deeply rooted all over America. It's still deeply rooted in the North, and it's still deeply rooted in the South.
I'm tired of marching.
I have a dream.
I must confess, that dream that I had that day has at many points turned into a nightmare. Some of the old optimism was a little superficial.
I'm tired of marching.
It helped the economic side of the nation to integrate lunch counters and public accommodations. It didn't cost the nation anything to get the right to vote established. And now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something.
I'm tired of marching.
Including some hostile whites. The only time that I have ever been booed was one night in our regular weekly mass meeting by some angry young men of our movement. I went home that night with an ugly feeling. Selfishly, I thought of my sufferings and sacrifices over the last 12 years. Why would they boo one so close to them? But as I lay awake thinking, I finally came to myself. And I could not for the life of me have less than patience and understanding for those young men. For 12 years, I and others like me had held out radiant promises of progress. I had preached to them about my dream. I had lectured to them about the not too distant day when they would have freedom all here now. I had urged them to have faith in America and in white society. Their hopes had soared. They were now booing me because they felt that we were unable to deliver on our promises. That we were unable to deliver on our promises. That we were unable to deliver on our promises. They were booing because we had urged them to have faith in people who had too often proved to be unfaithful. They were now hostile because they were watching the dream that they had so readily accepted turn into a frustrating nightmare.
So here he's explaining that he was being booed because the children at the time didn't like the direction or the failure of the civil rights era. So in 1960, I think this is around 1964, 65. So if in 1964, 65, King can realize that the 1950s civil rights movement was a failure, he recognized that in 1964, 65, and the children at the time recognized that in 1964, 65. What I'm saying to you is the children felt as though that was a failure. So when it was their turn to pick up the mantle and participate and fight, the children said no. This is what I mean by your baby boomers. If Martin Luther King is around in 1964, 1965, that puts him around the age of 39-ish. He's either 39, 37, 38, or 39, give or take. So that means he's an adult. He's the elder. He's from your silent generation. So if the children are booing, then that means by default, by math, if you stick with the math, that's your baby boomers. Your baby boomers are those that were born between 1945 and 1965. That's the calendar date, 1945 to 1965. So if you're 1954 with the civil rights era, you're 10 to 12 later with the 1964 speech. Those kids who are booing are those kids that eventually turn up, grow up, and become Bloods and Crips. They eventually grow up and become gangster disciples. They eventually grow up and become your vice lords. They eventually grow up and become all other gangs because they abandoned the civil rights movement because from their eyes, it was a failure. It was a failure because it didn't give them what they thought that they would get in return, but it wasn't a failure. It wasn't a failure because progress was made. And since they were who they were, they just didn't want to continue the war, the fight, the struggle. They thought civil rights was going to be a one and done and we all overcame. That is not the way war works. War works by you got to continue the fight. You got to fight to get what you want. Then you have to fight to maintain what you've acquired. And the problem with the civil rights era is you got to keep understanding what I'm saying. The baby boomers in general, they were a spoiled generation. They really didn't grow up with any kind of struggles. The Great Depression had already passed. Civil War had already passed. The age of industrialization had already passed. Your World War I and World War II had already passed. So in that time frame of opportunity, so from 1950 to around 1970, it was a large time where they really didn't have to do anything because their parents, which is Martin Luther King, which is Malcolm, which is Medgar Evers, which is even Marcus Garvey, which is Harry Belafonte, which is Sammy Davis Jr., James Brown. I'm going down the list with you guys so you can understand age. If you can understand the age, you can understand who was putting in the work, who had to put in that work, Bojangles, and then who was the direct recipient, or if you're not a recipient, then you're definitely a inheritor, beneficiary of all that work. Ida B. Wells came in and went out. Where are her children? Where are her grandchildren? Sojourner Truth came in and went out. So where are their offsprings? You understand what I'm saying? A. Philip Randolph, he was the lawyer for the Pullman Porters. Where are their children? Where are their offsprings? Lena Horne, where is her children? Where are her offsprings? What I'm saying is it was an older generation that was putting in the fight for the younger generation. When that younger generation came up, they felt as though it was a failure, and to a certain extent, they're right. But it was really only a failure because they themselves didn't want to fight. So if there's any example that you don't want to fight, now I ain't going in that direction, you're not going to go in that direction. But you must go in that direction. That's the way war works. So when King, when Malcolm, when Mecker, when Marcus, when all these individuals came up to do whatever it is that they did, the baton, they carried the baton as far as they could carry it. They couldn't carry it any further. Opposition wasn't going to allow them. So it was inherently up to the grandchildren, the children, to pick up where mommy and daddy was not able to go. And now understand what I'm saying. If King is around 38, 37, 38, 39, 40, he's aged out. He's getting old. Time is of the essence. His children are a certain age. He needs to focus on his family. All he can do is teach. But the fist fight and to keep going to jail and to keep getting your head busted by bricks and bottles and rocks, you can't continue to do that. That is the reason why the military and every other fighting system, they keep nurturing the young. They keep cultivating the young. They keep trying to enlist the young. The young come in and the young do all that, the rough and tough fighting, the skirmishes, while the old sit back and navigate, while the old sit back and instruct, while the old sit back and teach what they were able to teach. Well, this is what we did back then. And this is what allowed us to get this far. So we're going to teach you, the young, what we did back then, so that now that it's your turn, with advancement, you can manipulate this and manipulate that, but you don't have as many obstacles to overcome as we had as many obstacles to overcome, because for the most part, we've already overcame them. When we were out there were 500 potholes. There were 500 potholes. There were 6,000 foxholes. There were 8,000 landmines, and there was a partridge and a pear tree. So when it's your turn, you don't have all those potholes. You don't have all those landmines. You don't have all those foxholes. Yeah, but you still got to deal with the partridge and the pear tree. You still got to deal with some form of the struggle. But the boomers, they didn't want no part of it, period. They didn't want any part of it. So when you're looking at the Bloods and the Crips, and please keep in mind their age. So if it comes out in 68, 69, that's that immediate generation that says, nah, fuck that. Get off of that. Let's get on this. Let's go make some money. Let's go do this and let's go do that. But that is the downfall. Because they didn't participate, because they didn't fight, because they didn't uphold their end of the bargain, the boomers. The boomers is where it starts. It started there. Then by the time your first wave, Generation X comes through, Generation X, they have no idea. They don't want to participate either, but they've been taught not to participate. They've been taught go ahead and gangbang. They've been taught to go ahead and disco. They've been taught to go ahead and break dance. They've been taught to go ahead and rap. So they did. And white supremacy racism used that fear and used that ignorance. Again, the man sits up here and he says, I'm going to let you see what the man says about how we are using time inappropriately.
Time is neutral. It can be used either constructively or destructively. And I'm absolutely convinced that the forces of ill will in our nation, the extreme righteous in our nation, have often used time much more effectively than the forces of goodwill. It may well be that we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words of the bad people and the violent actions of the bad people, for the appalling silence and indifference of the good people who sit around and say, wait on time. Somewhere we must come to see that social progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the primitive forces of social stagnation. So we must help time, and we must realize that the time is always right to do right.
I'm tired of marching.
Well, as you can see, 2021, 2019, 2018, 2017, 2000, 1990, whatever decade you want to pull within the last 60, within the last 50 so odd years, we have not, as a people, as a race, we have not been using our time wisely. Well, why? Why would you say that? What makes you say that? Well, where did you get that from? Because you can look at the last 50 some odd years and just look at the television, look at the news, look at our families, look at the things that we've lost. We haven't been using our time wisely. Why? Because of the boomers. the boomers did not want to deal with or continue the struggle of civil rights and black liberation. When the men and women, which were the parents, which are the silence generation, they were under the mindset or the notion or the oath, and their mindset, the notion or oath was pretty much like this.
We made it clear that it was ultimately more honorable to accept jail cell experiences than to accept segregation and humiliation.
I'm tired of marching.
So those people, your great grandparents, and the men and women at that time, they thought it was more honorable to go to jail and try to fight for civil rights in order to make this world a better place for their children and or grandchildren. But when those boomers came along, the boomers said no. It appeared like it was a failure, so they didn't want to go in that direction, and they didn't want to sacrifice whatever it was that they thought they were going to have access to. They didn't want to sacrifice it. So being a child and being spoiled, I can clearly understand why they thought it was a bad thing, or it was a failure, or it wasn't going to work, or didn't work. So get off of that, get on this. They had that mindset because they were spoiled and they were entitled. So when it was time to get the house or get the car, kids didn't want it. They wanted the car only if the car was functioning properly. They wanted the house only if the house did not require any work or any repairs or any special attention. What am I getting at? If I have a car that's in the backyard and I plan on working on it, if I die, then that means I'm going to pass it on to one of my children. If I pass it on to one of my children, it is up to one of my children to either say, I'm going to take daddy's car, I'm going to work on it, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to get it to where he wanted it to go. I'm going to do it the way he wanted to do it to the best of my ability. He wanted it a certain color, I'm going to get it a certain color. He wanted it to have X amount of horsepower, I'm going to give it to have X amount of horsepower. He wanted it to look like this, and I'm going to get it to look like that based on what he and I have spoken to the best of my ability. The same thing goes for a house. This was grandmom's house. This was grandpa's house. This is daddy's house. And I remember my dad or my mom or whoever working on the house all of the time. Once they die, they pass the house on to the kid, but they want the kid, they want the car, and they want the house. But they do not want to work on the car or work on the house. If it's the car, what they're going to say is I don't want that. That's too much work. I ain't got time for that. They're going to sell it. Hey, man, how much give me that. I'll take that, man. Hell yeah, good idea. Yeah. Time goes by. Years go by, even maybe decades go by. You will see somebody driving the same type car. Not exactly that exact car, but somebody who's driving something similar. What then will happen is you'll see how it looks. You will see how it performs. You will pull that person over and you go like, yo, man, I used to have one of those. And then y'all start to talk and like, yo, man, I did this and I did that and I did that and I did it in order to restore it. Now the car is worth something. Same thing goes for the house. Yo, man, we used to live there, man. They did a good job. You can see how they did the shingles, man. They did a good job. Oh, they got brand new windows in there. Yeah, man, they did a good job. What I'm saying is you throw away your inheritance because you do not want do not see the value in it. You throw away your inheritance because you do not want to put in the work and effort in trying to get it to the next stage. And the boomers did not want to participate and they did not want to fight as far as white supremacy, racism, WSR. They did not want any smoke with them. So they said it'd be better if they just go in the other direction. And they felt as though the older generation was stupid. All of those culminated in gang. What they were supposed to do is continue the struggle.
We are in a new era, a new phase of the struggle, where we have moved from a struggle for decency, which characterized our struggle for 10 or 12 years, to a struggle for genuine equality.
I'm tired of marching.
So, class, you heard the man say we're going into a new phase. The first phase was the brutality of WSR. Jim Crow, Bull Connor, which is the brutality aspect of it is You know, you couldn't eat at the restaurants. You couldn't get on the cars, street cars, or the buses. Physical attack. Because they were attacking you physically, you didn't care about the racism mistreatment. In a nutshell, your people wanted the physical attacks to stop. The problem with that is it was just the tip of the iceberg. And the man says as we were going in a new phase. The issue is because they thought that it was over, they really didn't want to go any further. And again, I already explained to you the spoiled person's analogy, the mindset. By the time that second phase or second wave, second instrument, second leg, second lap came, the kids and the adults, they didn't want no part of it. They were wiped out. They were done. And because they were wiped out, they were done. They abandoned the civil rights movement. There you go, your gangs. There you go with the welfare moms. All I'm really getting at is the gist. Because they spoiled, did not want to continue the fight, and they thought it was a lost cause, they abandoned it altogether when they should not have abandoned it. And that is the reason why we're here now. As they're aging out, as they're dying off, WSR is showing its fangs, and it's a real and live entity. It's a real and live thing. It's a mindset. It's a culture. It is the way they do things. So now we have to participate and pick up where they left off.
I'm tired of marching.
I would not say that the civil rights movement is dead. It's simply that we are moving to a new phase of the movement. New phase of the movement. New phase of the movement. For well now 12 years, we struggled to end legal segregation and all of the humiliation surrounding legal segregation. So it was a struggle for decency. It was a struggle to get rid of extremist behavior toward Negroes. Now we are in a new phase, and that is a phase where we are seeking genuine equality, where we are dealing with hard economic and social issues. And it means that the job is much more difficult. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to get a program that will force the government to put billions of dollars into ending slums. It's a wonderful thing to work and be concerned about integrating public accommodations, or integrating the public schools, which I will continue to work for with vigor and with zeal. But I've also got to be concerned about the survival of a world in which to be integrated. And these issues to me are tied together in that sense.
I'm tired of marching. I'm tired of marching. Tired of marching for something that should have been mine at birth. I don't mind saying to you tonight. I don't mind saying to you tonight that I'm tired of the tension surrounding our day. I don't mind saying to you tonight that I'm tired of living every day under the threat of death. I have no martyr complex. I want to live as long as anybody in this building tonight, and sometimes I begin to doubt whether I'm going to make it through. I must confess I'm tired.
In this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
Fair Use Act disclaimer. This site is for educational purposes only. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research.